collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Coming up this week, a one-act play on a rooftop.
I never said that.
You told me a few months ago, you said it was
private.
Literary agency Cyprus launches Writing Nicosia.
We'll be going through the town, crossing the buffer zone and visiting various landmarks in both the south and the north, and given 10 or 15 minutes to look at the place, maybe discuss the significance of that place. The participants will have time to write about how the place affects them.
I just want my children to be happy. Or do I?
I think one of the things we notice about perhaps people that don't have everything in the material sense, they have human relationships, they have a sense of belonging, they feel that they are part of something.
And the refugee death toll in the Mediterranean rises, while Europe looks the other way.
It's rescued 140,000 people, but even with this colossal investment on the part of Italy, we've seen the numbers of people dying in the Mediterranean, in the central Mediterranean route in particular, reach record new levels. That really is crying out for a much more sophisticated, much more resourced European Union effort.
I never said that.
You told me a few months ago, you said it was
private.
Well, that's an excerpt from a play you've got a chance to see for a very limited period of time at the beginning of October. It is Heights, a one-act play by Amy Fox. And with me are the protagonists, Alexia Pareskeva, David Dimitriou and Andreas Araouzos. This is all being put on by Alpha Square, and that, I think, Andreas, is your baby. So tell us a little bit about why you chose this play.
This is a short one-act play, 30-minute play, which has to do with three youngsters stuck on a rooftop, and we're doing it as site-specific theatre, so we're doing it in a real setting, a rooftop in old Nicosia. If it were the absolute reality, it would have been in Manhattan, but we are in Nicosia, so we're doing it here. We're using the rooftop, we're using these three young people who are on the edge of some sort of decision-making in their life. And I think that the issues these youngsters have, really a lot of the audiences from any age will identify with. And it's the kind of play that urges you to make some sort of decision in your life about the things that are troubling you, that relationships, friendship even. It's got all sorts of social issues that are very, very modern, and this is normally the kind of plays that Alpha Square puts on.
Right, Alexia, let's come to you. I know that you're going to all be very cagey because you don't want to give away the twist in the tale, but I think you have all worked together before.
Yeah.
So does that make it easier when you take on a new project? I know you've got to get into your character, but you already know how each other works in a sense. Does it make it easier?
Yes, it does, because you obviously, I think you know everyone's techniques, and I've worked with Andreas for years now, both as an actor, as a director as well, and I've worked with David on two projects, one project, yes. And I mean, every time you learn more and more about the actor, and it is easier, but every time it becomes more challenging as well. So.
What's it like, David, working on a rooftop?
Well, the site-specific element is really challenging. I really do enjoy it because you don't have the traditional benefits of a theatre, such as the sound resonance and stuff like that. But I do think it gives a really genuine feel to anything you do. And this rooftop is great because it has such a beautiful view, and I'm sure the audience are really going to appreciate it. As actors, I think we are overcoming the challenges. Every time we rehearse, we get a bit more used to the necessities for better volume, better resonance, better characterization, basically, because there is no fourth wall anymore. It is in the round. It is real. It is right in front of the audience's faces. So
the audience are going to be sitting where exactly? I mean, you're just going to put chairs up on the roof for them?
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be like passers-by while this argument between these three youngsters is taking place on this rooftop. They're in the round and they're very, very close to the actors.
So where and when, and of course where can people get tickets?
There's only 6 shows on the rooftop of 1010 Hall in the old Nicosia on Grammou Street. The reservations are on our website alphasquare.com.cy or on the phone number 7000 1140. And the bar opens at 8. We are sponsored by Ice and Bailey's Wine, and so people will be watching this having their glass of wine. So the bar opens at 8 and the show starts at 8:30.
And your tickets, you said, through the Alpha Square website?
Through the Alpha Square website.
But presumably limited numbers. How many people can you fit on the roof?
Absolutely. It's only 50 seats and only 6 shows.
So check out Alpha Square. Google it if you'd like to go and see Heights, which is happening just for 6 shows in Nicosia. Don't miss it.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Writing Nicosia Beyond Barriers is a Treasure Island workshop, and it's all happening between September the 29th and November the 2nd this year. It's called Let's Write Nicosia. It's organised by the literary agency Cyprus, and the very first week, this Saturday, October the 4th, between 4:30 and 7:30, Rachel Pettus will be holding the workshop. Rachel, thanks for joining us. Just give us a bit of a background about writing Nicosia Beyond Barriers. What does that mean?
Well, in writing, you're always trying to expand and explore what you think, what you feel, how you transmit your feelings. And the idea was conceived by Aydin Mehmet Ali, who's a very experienced writer, who's interested in breaking through barriers and working with people to overcome either emotional, physical barriers. Nicosia being the walled city, first of all surrounded by walls and then also bisected by a wall, and also having all sorts of cultural and faith divides, is sort of a very fertile place in which to explore the concept of barriers and breaking them. So this is what we're hoping to do by leading small groups of people through routes that will take in certain landmarks within the walls, both north and south buffer zone, and allowing them to explore in writing whatever genre they like, either poetry or fiction or non-fiction, what these places mean to them.
It does say in the blurb that I've received that you don't need to be a writer to participate. The passion to say something about this city is enough. Do you think this is actually a great chance for people who've perhaps never put down their emotions and their feelings into writing to perhaps start doing that?
I think it's a very good chance. I mean, what, after all, is a writer? I was having this discussion with a friend who is a well-recognized poet, and we were saying, what does it take to be a writer? Is it just whether you write your journal or whether you write, a few notes here and there, or where is the line that you cross once you call yourself a writer? So, I mean, anybody can join. It's for established, people who are established published writers, or people who just jot down notes, or maybe even people who haven't even tried writing before.
And of course it could end up adding to all the very famous writers of the past centuries who've travelled to Cyprus and written down their impressions. And I know that there are only limited places, I think 10 people in each workshop. So can you tell us how people who would like to join you on Saturday should go about doing that?
There's a lot more information on the Facebook page. We are on Facebook. Under Literary Agency Cyprus. So anybody who's listening to this who's interested in finding more can visit the Facebook page. and then write a comment or post on the wall. There's also plenty of information about how to get in touch and sign up for the workshops. It is essential to sign up. As you said, places are limited. There are two groups that are women only. Mine is one of those, and the other one is the midnight one, or the late night one, that's in the middle of October. I think it's October the 24th.
That's from 9 until midnight.
That's also women only. But they are filling up. Mine, I think, has 7 in it already, and the following one on the 10th already has 9.
People need to be a little bit quick then in putting in their application, because it is first come, first served. I think it's literaryagencycyprus@gmail.com.
Yes, that is the email address, and I'm monitoring that, and I think somebody else is also, so we will get that. But also, if going on Facebook, if you just click like or going, it does not sign you up, so people have to come through either the Facebook page by requesting a place, or they have to go to the email address.
And actually, what will you be doing on Saturday? 4:30 till 7:30, 3 hours, doing what?
Well, we'll be meeting at the old powerhouse, the Pallias Electrikis, in central Nicosia, and we'll spend a few minutes, first of all, looking at the possible places to go. There have been 5 routes mapped out that will cover 3 or 4 landmarks. So the participants will decide, I think, pretty much, we want to see these things and we want to go to this place, this is what interests us. So we'll set off. I will be accompanied by Lisa Majaj, I think, and possibly also by Aiden, and we will have a film crew with us. Part of the whole workshop experience is that all of the 5 workshops will be filmed by local filmmakers, and then those films will be edited and put together and uploaded into the Treasure Island exhibition that's running at the old powerhouse as part of the ongoing exhibition. I think there's also a couple of readings that will be going on during the next 5 weeks. So we'll be going as a group through the town, crossing the buffer zone and visiting various landmarks in both the south and the north, where we will be stopping at each one, and given 10 or 15 minutes to look at the place, maybe discuss the significance of that place, maybe not. The participants will have time to write about how the place affects them, as it's said, in whatever genre they like. Maybe they'd be inspired to launch into a detective fiction piece, and then we will be filmed, and then maybe 1 or 2 of the writers will read what they have written, and then we'll move on to the next place.
They'll take notes, presumably, as they're walking around, but the finished writing product comes a bit later?
There may be the chance to read it at the open mic, or at the end, when we all convene back at the Pallias Electrikis. There'll be a chance probably to sit down and flesh out maybe what they've written and share it with the other members of the group.
But the finished product that goes into the sort of palimpsest, I suppose you could call it, of Nicosia landmarks, that can be fine-tuned later.
Yeah, there is no need to, quote-unquote, produce something from your walk and your experience, except the experience itself and what it inspires in each individual participant.
It's going to be a fascinating project. It runs from the end of September all the way through to the beginning of November. Rachel Pettis, thanks for joining us, and if you'd like to take part, contact literaryagencycyprus@gmail.com or look for them on Facebook.
Keep up to date with events and news in Cyprus with the Cyprus News Digest. You can stream it live on mycyradio.eu, listen again on the Cyprus Mail website, or download the podcast to your phone or tablet and listen anytime, anywhere.
The American Academy in Nicosia is opening its doors to the community this month. It's offering a series of open lectures that aim to help parents and others who work with children. The first one's happening on Wednesday, the 8th of October at 7:30. It's at the American Academy Nicosia's auditorium, and entrance is free. The very first guest speaker is Sarah Piper, who joins us on the Cyprus News Digest. She's a human services professional, but she's got lots of experience in welfare and family support. You're talking, Sarah, about I just want my children to be happy, or do I? Well, don't we? I'm not sure what the title means. Do explain.
Well, I think we need to. We have different definitions of happiness, don't we? And when I looked at the title, I thought, this happy, smiling, bright, happy children who seem to have everything in life, and we can often think of it as a kind of a superficial happiness in a way. But I think there's a deeper happiness that comes from maybe working through something, persevering through something, even if we have some kind of hardship or adversity or trouble. When we work through that, we're stronger, we become more resilient. And they're finding in research of children growing up that the kids who are stronger and more resilient are the ones who have actually faced trouble or hardship. They're actually more able to deal with that kind of thing. Whereas the kids that have had everything easy and happy and everything given to them and it's all good, when they hit a particular trouble or perhaps grief or loss or even change, they can find it quite difficult to adjust, which really indicates that those children are not developing resilient qualities in themselves because they're not being faced with some kind of trouble. Of course we don't want to wish trouble on ourselves and nor our children, but I think in this life now, for some of us, where if things are going quite well, we're happy for it to just go along. But it's okay to have a bit of resistance. It's actually quite good for us to have a bit of resistance, for the children to have to persevere through something or to have to stick with something.
Are we talking here really about challenging what has become the norm in education in terms of not letting your children fail? Because you speak to entrepreneurs who say, I learned everything I learned by failing. And we seem to be cushioning children in not just home life but also in schools. You don't put too many red crosses on an essay because they might get disheartened. But actually at the end of it, they haven't learnt to spell. So is it that sort of thing that you're talking about?
Precisely, exactly, yes. It's life. It's life to make mistakes. It's life to fall over, but we have to learn to get up again. And it's unrealistic, I think, to think that everything in life is going to go smoothly. I mean, we as adults, with the benefit of hindsight, we know that life has its difficult times, it has its ups and downs, life gets complicated and tricky. And yet we want to somehow shield our children from that. We want to protect them from that. Why? Why do we want to? I mean, kids are quite capable of dealing with difficulties, with change, with hardship.
Especially if they've got some backup.
Absolutely, yeah. If they've got backup and if they're aware of their strengths, if they're aware of what's going to keep them going. And this is the model that I use and which I will be going through in the talk, called the Resilience Donut. And it talks about children being able to navigate their way through the world by pulling on their own strengths and pulling on the strengths around them. So if they have, for example, if they have family members who they really trust and who help them to feel strong, then increasing that connection and increasing that relationship is a good thing. If they have something that they're particularly good at, a particular skill, then continuing to do that helps them feel stronger. It helps them to feel, I can do that. And it increases their self-esteem, but it just increases their
willingness to try, probably.
Yeah, their willingness to try, yeah. And, having a skill doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be the best at it, but it means we'll have to try and, we want to get better at it. We can also have strengths like our community. It might be a local youth group, it might be a musical orchestra or band that we go to, or it might just simply be the friends in our neighbourhood that we feel like we belong to.
I think it's interesting that if you look around you at the people in the street, The ones that actually have the least tend to be the ones with the biggest smiles on their faces. I mean, is that a fair comment?
Absolutely. I think when you talk to somebody who's been to a third world country they say they were so poor, but they were so happy. And it's remarkable, isn't it? Where does that come from? And I think one of the things we notice about perhaps people that don't have everything in the material sense, they have human relationships, they have a sense of belonging, they feel that they are part of something. And
so maybe all along, we're in the first world countries, we've got it wrong.
Well, I think we can learn a lot from from other parts of the world, perhaps that we think don't have it so good.
And you can join Sarah for her talk on I Just Want My Children to Be Happy. Or do I? It's happening on Wednesday the 8th of October, 7:30 at the American Academy in Nicosia. Entrance is free.
You can subscribe to the Cyprus News Digest on iTunes for free and get the program downloaded to your phone or tablet so you can listen anytime, anywhere.
And let's take a look at some of the things happening around Cyprus this weekend. To mark Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Europa Donna is holding its annual Pink Silhouette Walk on Saturday. The walk will start from next to the Capitol Centre in Makarios Avenue at 5 p.m. The 6th International Pharos Contemporary Music Festival runs from October the 4th to the 8th. They have concerts, lectures, workshops and screenings at the Shoe Factory in Old Nicosia. It focuses on the connection of new music and other forms of art, as well as alternative forms of contemporary music such as free jazz and electronics. The festival opens on the 4th of October with an innovative concert concept by the Ergon Ensemble, during which films of the silent era will be screened simultaneously with the live performance of new music works. You can find out more at www.pharosartsfoundation.org. And the 2014 Kypria Festival runs till October the 8th, with various theatre, music and dance performances by both local and international artists, happening at different venues across the island. Full details on that at www.kypria, that's kypria.org.cy. Well, it's a year on from the Lampedusa shipwrecks. If you recall, they claimed over 500 lives. And now Amnesty International has brought out a new report that highlights the spiralling death toll of refugees and migrants in the Mediterranean. We, of course, in Cyprus have had our very own case in this last week, with 345 refugees rescued off a vessel just off Paphos last Friday. Well, Amnesty International's report, Lives Adrift, Refugees and Migrants in Peril in the Central Mediterranean, may not include the Cyprus area per se. It's more to do with Italy and Malta, but it makes disturbing reading. John Dalhusen is Amnesty International's Europe and Central Asia Programme Director. He joins us on the Cyprus News Digest. John, this does make very worrying reading, particularly the comments in the report about the fact that European Union countries don't seem to be addressing the problems.
No, we saw at the time of the October shipwrecks last year that you referred to quite a lot of talk about the need for a collective EU response to a collective European problem, but very little action. Indeed, the only country that really stepped up to the plate was Italy, and it has been delivering really quite significant search and rescue services across the central Mediterranean over the last year at a significant cost, €9 million a month at least. It's rescued 140,000 people. But even with this colossal investment on the part of Italy, we've seen the numbers of people dying in the Mediterranean, in the central Mediterranean route in particular, reach record new levels. That really is crying out for a much more sophisticated, much more resourced European Union effort.
Can we put this down to anything in particular? We know that the areas these people are coming from are fraught with conflict, but some of them are also, of course, economic migrants. I mean, have you got any idea who is fleeing conflict and persecution and who is simply trying to build a better life for their family?
Over the last few years, it's been relatively constant. The proportion of refugees to economic migrants is about 50-50 of those entering irregularly and taking sea routes. The prima facie refugees, they are mostly Syrians, Eritreans, Somalis, Afghan, a number of other countries. And they're about 50%, so at least half of those taking to sea routes. The other half are mostly economic migrants. The thing to look into here is there are essentially two factors external factors that have contributed to the rise in refugees and migrants taking to the sea routes. There's the growing instability in the Middle East, growing numbers of Syrians arriving. There's secondly the significant deterioration of the situation in Libya, where previously more stable resident migrant community is coming under increasing difficulties, discrimination, harassment, and exploitation, and is also seeking to leave. There is, however, a third factor, and it's very significant, and that's been the closing of the EU's external land borders, particularly Greece and Bulgaria, with Turkey, where there's been a very significant contraction in land crossings as a result of EU policies of sealing off those borders, and that's pushing people to take these dangerous sea routes.
What does Amnesty International want done about this? Because I want also to ask you about the Dublin regulation, which I think that you also say is causing problems, because there is, and we know this here in Cyprus, an unfair strain on countries that are, if you like, on the front line or involved, like Italy and Malta, in the rescue operations in that middle Mediterranean area.
Well, there are three things that we would like to see the EU and its member states really focusing on. The first, it's urgent and it needs to happen now, is the setting up of a pan-European, a collective search and rescue service that operates right up to Libyan territorial waters and takes on many of the functions that the Italian Operation Mare Nostrum is currently delivering. That needs to be properly resourced, that needs to have the right mandate, focusing on search and rescue, and that needs to operate right up until this zone. Ideas of this kind are sitting on the table, but they currently fall far short of what the EU needs to be delivering. So that's the first point. Search and rescue services delivered collectively with sufficient resources.
Can I ask you, before you continue, John, if you get that in place and you have, let's call it an EU search and rescue mission just off the territorial waters of, say, Libya, when it picks up a couple of hundred refugees, where does it take them?
Well, this links to my second point, because even if you have a European search and rescue service that uses the assets of European countries, because that's what it would be if it was a Frontex-led operation, these would still be following the directions of either Italian or Maltese search and rescue command and control centres in Malta and Rome, respectively. So the issue of disembarkation would still arise. Where do they go? Who takes them? And this leads inevitably to an analysis of many of the shortcomings that exist in the search and rescue system, the national search and rescue systems that operate between Italy and Malta, which are very significantly aggravated by disincentives to carrying out search and rescue operations that flow from the Dublin regulation, which, as you're well aware, is the system whereby the first European country of entry is also the country that takes the primary responsibility for dealing with the migrants and asylum seekers. So long as there is a Dublin system in place that places the burden on the receiving country, there will always be difficulties with the effective delivery of search and rescue services between neighbouring countries who might both have a responsibility to provide them. Looking beyond that, in answer to your broader question about the Dublin regulation, it's clear at the moment that it sits very uncomfortably alongside the reality of migration flows, preferred destinations of migrants, and the resources of external border countries like Greece, like Bulgaria, indeed like Cyprus, like Malta, certainly less so Italy. And I think it is time, and Amnesty International will certainly advocate for a review of the Dublin system that allows for a much more equitable distribution of the responsibility to receive and provide for the needs of refugees and asylum seekers, but also the cost of returning and processing irregular migrants.
Right, and I think you've got George with you there, who we've spoken to before on the programme and who is
Indeed.
very much responsible for the Cyprus area and familiar, I think, with our very own situation that arose, as I said at the beginning, last week. And I know that one of the things we've been reading in the press today is that our Interior Minister has promised that those who wish to travel on to join family members in northern European countries will be able to do so. George, that's not necessarily the case, is it, if the countries in question prefer not to take them?
Well, under the Dublin regulation, I think this is what the Minister is referring to, because it's also applicable to Cyprus. One of the ways for them to continue on is if they can prove that they have family links in other European countries. There's still a procedure to follow, but technically it is possible. But this is also decided on a case-to-case basis. So it's not going to be the whole system or the whole regime applied across the board for these people. So what the Cypriot authorities have to do is register their applications and then initiate the procedures for the people to reunite with their families in other European countries.
Okay, and that could, of course, take quite a lot of time.
Well, it depends, because how fast the authorities will move, but to be fair, it's not only up to the Cypriot authorities. If we assume that they do move on fast with that, it also depends on the countries on the other end. I mean, to put it broadly, this Dublin system determines who is responsible for every asylum application. And one of the elements that they are looking for is family reunification. What most of the member states, most of the states do is they first look to what is the first point of entry, and like that they assign their responsibility to that country. But it's not obligatory that they don't take responsibility for these people. So yes, there is a window there that they can allow these people to continue on in other European countries. But again, as I told you, this has to be decided on a case-to-case basis. And honestly, I cannot really predict how long this will take.
Okay, just your comments on the fact that we seem, and with the situation in the Middle East, it would be fair, I think, to assume that this may not be an isolated incident. Do you see there being a new corridor to Europe from Syria that is coming around Cyprus?
Well, this is something that is in the mind of lots of people, and I know for sure because I have discussed it with them. It's in the mind of the Cypriot authorities. But, honestly, we have been hearing about these alarms that there are going to be thousands or hundreds of thousands of people coming, but we haven't seen it so far. We heard it before with the Iraqis. Now, there's no telling. No one can tell really what is going to happen. This boat, I understand, started from Latakia in Syria. If it's going to continue or not, it's really difficult to say. But in any event, I think the Cypriot authorities and the European authorities must be prepared to deal with that, must be prepared to have adequate reception conditions and be ready to perform a rescue operation like the one that the Cypriot authorities successfully have undertaken so far. So, alarm, no, but preparedness and be ready to deal with the situation, yes, and that requires a collective answer from the whole European Union.
Which is, of course, the bottom line of all that we've been talking about. George Cosmopoulos and previously John Dalhousen of Amnesty International. Many thanks for telling us about that new report, Lives Adrift, Refugees and Migrants in Peril in the Central Mediterranean. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.